Session co-organized by IFC, World Bank Group.
I tell them, do you want to do something?
As we gather today at the backdrop of Marathon on day 3 of the assembly here in Marrakesh, I want to share with you some insights that this is not just a regional gathering. It's a global stage, and the stakes have never been that high. I'll take a mic. Can we get to Mulligan? Does anyone play golf here? We'll do it again. Thank you. Okay, let's start. You know what? That's an amazing lineup. You can give yourself a round of applause. That makes me think about when I was preparing this session, I called a friend who invested in tech in Africa, and I said, how is it going? He said, it's going amazing. I'm sleeping like a baby. I said, really? He said, yes. I sleep for an hour, and I cry for an hour, and I sleep for an hour, and I cry for an hour. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome. With no further ado, please welcome on stage Minister Nadia Fattah, Minister of Economy and Finance, to give the opening word.
Dear participants, all protocol observed, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to take part in this event dedicated to innovation in Africa, which is of particular importance to all of us. On this occasion, I would like to sincerely thank the organizer for choosing this relevant theme with multiple dimensions. After all, considering the complexity of the challenges our continent faces today, salvation will only come from our collective ability to provide creative and innovative solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no need to remind that innovation is the key to success and the driving force behind resilient, sustained growth and development. In fact, the natural resources available in our continent are no longer sufficient on their own to ensure and maintain its growth. Rather, the ability to innovate has become today an essential prerequisite for a lasting development. Being aware of this, several African countries have undertaken ambitious reforms and actions to promote and prioritize innovation. FinTech represents an excellent example in this respect. Africa has become one of the most innovative continents, particularly in terms of financial technologies, which have made a major contribution to the financial inclusion of our population and the promotion of entrepreneurship. Regarding health tech, innovative ideas and initiatives abound in our continent, as evidenced by the rapid growth in the number of innovative companies operating in this field. These innovations have become crucial for our countries, and they will enable easier access to healthcare services. Agri-tech is also growing at a very fast pace. In fact, the development of this technology has become vital for our countries, as our continent is severely affected by the adverse consequences of climate change and is experiencing one of the highest demographic growth rates in the world. In addition, we must not forget that in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, Africa has demonstrated a great capacity to innovate and adapt to difficult contexts on one side, and this pandemic crisis have made us aware of the important role of innovation and technology on the other. Morocco considers innovation and technology development a top priority in its government's agenda. This is illustrated by the launch of ambitious initiatives such as the InnovInvest program, launched by the Ministry of Economy and Finance in partnership with the World Bank, which has allowed the development of a complete and balanced ecosystem to support startups, both technically and financially. Ladies and gentlemen, the African continent offers a very high growth potential and many opportunities that are waiting to be explored. To this end, and in order to fully leverage innovation and technology, we need to strengthen our efforts to further develop environments that are conducive to the emergence and growth of innovative businesses. Of course, this ambition cannot be achieved without the mobilization of substantial financial resources for innovation. I also would like to draw your attention to the importance of technical assistance, capacity building, and the promotion of an entrepreneurial culture among young people. Additionally, we should strengthen dialogue and promote knowledge and experience sharing between our countries to better channel our effort and achieve our objective in the best possible way. The potential for technology development and innovation in Africa is considerable. Therefore, we need to seize this opportunity to unleash Africa's potential and energy, put innovation at the service of our continent's development and its youth. I wish you insightful and a fruitful discussion that we can make innovation a vital lever for the development of our continent. In conclusion, I would say that Africa could become a major innovation engine if we redouble our efforts jointly and create an attractive and enabling environment for innovation and ideas development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Fattah, for highlighting the stewardship of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI and the Moroccan digital journey. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from government. Let's hear it from the private sector. And at the end, let's compare notes and see if they're going towards the same direction. President Aelj, President of the Confédération Générale des Entreprises du Maroc. You can give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Abdelmalek. Dear Ministers, Excellencies, dear President and Directors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I'm very pleased to address you today on behalf of the Moroccan private sector and to engage a major topic, Africa, the innovation engine. Our gathering is an amazing occasion to celebrate our continent's success story, but most importantly, to discuss ways to multiply and amplify them. It is a no-brainer that Africa has made significant strides in the past few years, becoming an emerging innovation powerhouse. From Morocco, where farmers use innovation to face water scarcity, to Nairobi or Accra, where families send and receive money through their mobile phone, technology has become the order of the day on the continent, bringing solutions to most pressing challenges Africa faces in terms of healthcare, education, and sustainability. The numbers are also very expressive. Despite startups around the globe recording a significant decline in funding in 2022, Africa continued its upward trend with $4.9 billion equity raised in 2022 across close to 700 deals. Fintech is leading the way with $1.9 billion in equity funding, holding a share of 39% of total funding. This is music to our ears, but is it enough? I will say no, we can go much further. Despite the tremendous progress made, Africa currently represents only 0.2% of the value of global startups. While many startups hold great promises, a significant number fail within their first few years of creation for many reasons. Sustaining the growth of Africa as technology powerhouse is key to the continental industrialization and growth. Concerted action and bold measures should be urgently taken from all public and private sectors and stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, You will all agree with me that financing is key to survival of startup and many companies also. Solving the funding gap should be tackled urgently throughout creating and promoting more innovative finance vehicles, as well as mobilizing institutional or corporate capital toward innovation. I am happy to see in this room many bankers and private equity funds. I hope you're all coming with a lot of money. Funds are essential, but talents are as much important. Tech startups are not just creating innovative solutions, but also generating employment opportunities for our continent's population is doubling by 2050. Let us also all not forget that 50% of this population will be under 25, which some sees as a risk, but I will choose to see it as an opportunity. Building a digital workforce capable of navigating a perpetual changing environment requires a better education, better skills development program, and a better accessibility to internet. Let's work on these factors through efficient PPPCs. But for me, a bigger challenge is retaining Africa's skilled talent. So instead of just worrying about brain drain, we should work on providing a greener grass for Africa's human resources and the fulfilling environment for them to unleash their potential and achieve their dreams. A thriving environment includes conducive and healthy business climate, supportive legislation, better life quality, and an open dialogue with policymakers. I cannot conclude my remarks without mentioning access to market. We should all encourage innovation, consumption, and generate demand for tech solutions. This effort should be done on a local level, but also on a continental level. A harmonized common framework is essential to make access to regional market easier. Accelerating the effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area will unlock the potential of digital trade in Africa and enable businesses to expand their reach with the potential to boost overall economic output by $29 trillion by 2050. Finally, creating a Pan-African tech network could foster collaboration, investment and technology sharing between African actors, and harness the collective potential of our talent, pools, markets, and resources. Ladies and gentlemen, with no much support, the African tech ecosystem could, in the past few years, achieve a lot. Let us imagine one moment what our continent's startups can fulfill if we decide to put their growth at the center of our priority, not only in speeches. This is a call to action. We have a beautiful momentum to build on. Let us not miss it. Africa's growth and future depends on that. Thank you all for your attention. I'm looking forward to the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Alj. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard the symphony of official speeches. Let's go now to the jazz of the high-profile panel. I welcome on stage my 5 amazing panelists, Minister Mazur, Minister Owusu, Meditezi, Mr. Benouda, Mr. Selassie. Please come on stage under the applause of the audience. As you can see, we're very well organized. There are little cartons with your names. You just... So naturally, we always start with the bad news. We used to have 50 minutes. We now have 35 minutes. So as a good economist, we used to have 2 questions per person. We'll just have 1.5, which will be easier to store this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a stellar lineup today to discuss these issues of digital transition, Africa, how to foster entrepreneurship, how to move on, and how to really be a catalyst for this amazing audience. I think my panelists need no introduction, but I'll start with the host country, of course, with you, Mr. Mazur. You're a startupper. You hold as well a PhD, so you're both in the world of thinkers and the world of doers, and now you're in the world of government. Mr. Owusu, you are an advocate for human rights and to advance social agenda and you're a Minister of Digital now in your country, in Ghana. Mehdi Tezi, you're the Vice President General of the Confédération Générale des Entreprises du Maroc, a very successful entrepreneur. Mr. Selassie, you come from the IMF, and you're the head of the region at IMF. I'm sorry because I don't have the exact title on my prompter, but it will come. It's the problem of digital when it's not working that well, but it will come. And Mohamed Ben Aouda, you're an amazing entrepreneur, and you will tell us all about this experience. Minister Mazur, let me start with you, because you entered this global stage of Moroccan government in autumn 2021. You were not very known in Morocco, but you were known in the right circles, the one that made you enter government. But before that, you were an entrepreneur, and you were dealing with major issues when it comes to innovation and digital. Actually, my question is very simple. How is Morocco's doing? How is your journey trying to have Morocco 4.0 exist? And in the words of the great American poet Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately, Minister?
Well, let me tell you, talking about this government is actually the first government that has a ministry dedicated to digital transition. This is a sign that His Majesty King Mohammed VI gives a lot of importance to digital transition, and the role of this ministry is to channel existing efforts, because there were existing efforts in the country, and to strengthen them and give them to reach our ambition of making innovation, digital transition, a real lever for socio-economic development, job creation, and growth. Talking about innovation, talking about in a more general way. I'll get to this. In the outsourcing sector, for example, we're the second top outsourcing destination in Africa. So there are companies from investors from the US, Europe, India coming to Morocco to work through our digital talents, and they're producing cutting-edge solutions for European markets, for AI solutions, for American markets, etc. A sector that employs 130,000 people, just 15,000 creation of just over the past 2 years, and it's still growing. There are people coming and doing R&D centers. So this is not just the cutting-edge solution, cutting-edge innovation. Now, startups also. There are a lot of vibrant startups. We have some of them on stage. I can see some of them here attended. They're doing exciting work in health tech, ed tech. They're getting outstanding awards. They're raising funds from Morocco, from abroad. They're doing a lot of exciting things. Morocco has a lot of initiatives already. So the minister talked about financing. There are the Jeune Entreprise Innovante, the label, to know what's a startup, giving them some advantages for the foreign exchange. There is the Technopark network that's in multiple cities that has hosted more than 3,000 startups over its existence, more than 15,000 jobs, direct and indirect, over its 20 years of existence. So there are lots of things going on. So just yesterday I met with a Pan-African VC, and she told me that she's actually investing in a Moroccan startup. I don't want to say its name, but they're based in Nigeria, and they're investing in a Moroccan startups. And she said, she was telling me that there are outstanding things they're doing. We have the political stability. The startuppers in Morocco, many of them have had outstanding careers before, and they made the jump. It's a very courageous jump to have a very established career in a big company and make the jump to do a startup. It takes some courage. And these actually people are more likely to succeed in general, given all statistics. And we have quite a few of them in Morocco, and I encourage them and I applaud them, because I know I did the same, and I know it's not easy. So there is a lot of potential. We've achieved a lot. But we're only at 10% of our potential.
We'll talk about the challenges in the...
No, I don't want to say the balance. I'll rephrase it. We're at the potential. Our potential is 10 times bigger.
Okay.
For our GDP, we should be raising 10 times more funds. And I think one thing we should be doing is at least telling the world about our potential, making the world come and see our great startups to invest in them. And of course, as a government, we're working on regulatory framework, we're working on financing, we're working on having them have better access to market, to having them access to better incubators. So the government has a very ambitious program to increase the number of startups and to help the existing ones grow further.
Thank you. Minister Owusu, Minister Mazur was telling us the digital story of Morocco is yet to be written, and we have to do a better explaining of what we're doing so we can get more funds. Let me turn as well to the hardcore politician and the lawyer that you are. How can we have both go in pair? How can we have a strong legal framework that would enable the startup ecosystem and the digital economy to thrive, and at the same time, based on your experience and spearheading reforms in the sector of Ghana, we understand that it takes sometimes more than just wishful thinking to have startups thrive. What's in your experience? What does it take to make it completely thrive in your country, Ghana?
Thank you very much. I think it's absolutely essential that we have a light regulatory touch and not stifle innovation. Because whenever we come with heavy-handed regulation, we tend to make it challenging for the innovators to do what they do best. But it is also important to provide guidelines and parameters within which they should operate. And that's where the policymakers come in. And it is important that we use our might as government, as policymakers more or less, to assist the sector to grow by providing the necessary infrastructure, digital infrastructure that they all need. We've been told that the internet, without access to the internet, digital innovation will not survive. So it is our duty as governments to work with the private sector to provide that environment within which they can thrive. But I think governments can also do more. In addition to providing the infrastructure, the skills, we can also provide opportunities, and that's what we try to do in Ghana by challenging our tech entrepreneurs to come together to provide solutions to the challenges that we have locally. So when we wanted to do our EID, we tasked a local firm to develop the infrastructure for us, the technology for us, and they did it. Mobile money interoperability was done by a local firm. Digital property addressing was done by a local firm. SIM registration was done by a local firm. And we put 3 tech entrepreneurs together to come up with a platform on which we can apply for and pay for access to government services, and they did it. That's what we call the Ghana.gov. So governments can use their purchasing power to stimulate the tech and innovation ecosystem instead of just waiting for them to struggle on their own. We also need to provide financing. We can never have enough, and that's one of the challenges that our innovators have. But we can set up funds like we've done in Ghana, the National Entrepreneurial Innovation Program, to provide seed capital to move them from ideation to reality, more or less, and then teach them how to pitch. We also to pitch for access to global funds as well. And we also need to give them financial training, business advisory services as well. They're innovators, they're techies. They may not be the best business people around, but they need those skills to be able to grow to viable businesses. So these are all the things that we can do.
Thank you very much, Minister Owusu. Meditazi, let me turn to you. Minister Owusu and Minister Mazur just said, we're government, we're in the business of making decisions and laying the ground. You're in the business of, well, making money. So let's take it from your perspective as the head of Ask Capital with having major insurers in your capital. How was your journey so far? And how do you see the future of insurance technology in Africa?
Well, thank you for your question. So we started investing in the insurance sector in 2017. Today we run a brokerage business. We run a micro-insurance, a travel insurance business with an affinity approach, which means that we We sell small policies to a large number of persons. After 6 years, thank God, we've managed to multiply by 25 the value of our investment. And we relied on 3 levers, so 3 main things that I think we have done. First, on talents, we went very strong on talents, so we looked for the best of the best. And what we found out very soon is that people from the younger generation have different interests, and if you want to take them in your journey, you need to give them an equity interest. So we fund it, because they cannot when they're too young, and they're part of the journey. So that's one, and I think we've managed to have very good people because of that, and in our sectors, that's what we need. The second one is technology. In technology, we need to adapt on what we are in Africa. Our infrastructure are not the same as in Europe, so you need to be very agile. You need to take into account that the infrastructure is not the same as in more mature countries, and our IT is very strong, and that's a huge investment that we've done. The third one is we went to financial inclusion. Why? Because we deal in a continent, and our business, it's a low-income population. It's a low penetration insurance. If you look at insurance in mature countries, it's about 10% of the GDP. In our continent, it's between 0.5 and 3, depending on the country. So it's still low, which means that the potential is very high, and it's low infrastructure. So when you want to reach people, digital is the key, because you don't have roads. If you have lower roads or less roads, it's harder to reach population. So for that, you need strong technology to go and reach them. So that's the 3 levers on which we rely to achieve what we have done so far.
Thank you very much, Meditazi. Let's go multilateral. Let's maybe first pay an exceptional tribute to the IMF for their contribution to the digital world here in Marrakesh, because I think that most of the audience, if you turn to your phones and you look at your health app, you will see that the number of steps that you've taken in this huge campus since the last 3 days are just amazing. So everybody must be over 10,000 steps. But Abe Selassie, let me turn to you and ask you, how is your institution transforming to help digital transformation? What are the recent initiatives? What are the new steps that you are taking so you are sure that you are relevant with this new generation of African entrepreneurs who have amazing talents but lacking capital?
Thanks, Abdul Malik. So a couple of points, perhaps. I think first is there is a deep and profound recognition of how important innovation is, how digitalization is for improving growth prospects, development prospects in Africa as it is elsewhere. And if anything, I think in developing countries, there's an even bigger burden in making sure that technology is absorbed as quickly as possible. Again, in terms of why innovation is important, why technology is important, first thing I think is to say that a big chunk of the improvement that we've seen in development outcomes in Africa over the last 20 odd years has actually been because of, it has facilitated, digitalization has allowed the diffusion of technology, the diffusion of knowledge into the region, and the region has been very, very quick to adapt and innovate around that. Second, when we think about technology, the growth process itself, don't forget, involves 3 main ingredients. Capital, which has been recognized as being very important, and I will come to that in a minute. Labor, of course, which is another key ingredient. And the third one is, innovation, which is productivity improvements, which allow to bring capital and labor together much more efficiently. And when we think about innovation, we often think about, the countries needing to invent big things to facilitate growth. But to me, I think innovation and what we've seen in Africa and what encourages us is the adaptation, as was touched on earlier, that we've seen, the making technology adaptable to African circumstances, which has actually helped improve productivity, which has actually helped lower transaction costs and contributing to growth. I want to cite particularly kind of one example of kind of the innovation. In terms of big innovation, of course, M-Pesa, very famous, everybody knows about it, but an example from my home country, Ethiopia, there's a company called Ride, which is equivalent of Uber. Now, Ethiopia has a very, very backward banking system, financial system, payment system, so it was always going to be very difficult for an Uber-like application where you have to use credit cards to make business. But basically the entrepreneur behind Ride came up with a way in which the drivers would actually prepay to the company, and the company would direct calls to them, and at the end of the month they again prepay. So this was, I felt, kind of like beautiful innovation, and now kind of Ride and other Uber type services are are the way to go. So again, incrementalism, adaptation, really, really very important in terms of how technology does. So what is the role of the IMF? I think IMF is the entity, of course, that works primarily with governments. So how we help, of course, is in working with governments to make sure that the business environment is as conducive as possible for companies to be able to innovate and make the best of the possibilities that there are. Second, we do a lot of work with the financial sector in particular on things like the regulatory framework around fintech and other financial activities that are important in the region. And then thirdly, also, in the policy discussions, the program discussions that we have with many countries, we, advance to areas of, we push for two areas. One is digitalization of government services, where there is a lot of benefit to be had, from facilitating tax payment through, electronic means rather than paperwork, all the bureaucracy that can be reduced. And then the second one is identifying constraints, policy-induced constraints often, that are prohibiting innovation and asking governments to address those.
Thank you, Abe. Of course, e-government, I think you've already had the conversation with Mr. Mazur about how a government can improve in the field of digital. Ladies and gentlemen, we will turn to French for my next question, and we will go to very precise details in having a conversation with Mohamed Ben Aouda. J'aurais fait une introduction classique, mais la vérité c'est qu'on se connaît et qu'il m'est arrivé lorsque vous dirigiez une entreprise publique dont le nom commence par S et se termine par L, de venir vous visiter de temps en temps. Et je me rappelais à chaque fois cette phrase d'Einstein, c'est qu'il y a une ligne très fine entre la folie et la raison, et on ne sait jamais de quel côté ça se passe. Dans votre cas précis, vous êtes un outfox dans ce domaine des technologies, et le grand public marocain a commencé à voir votre image pendant la période du Covid, où votre entreprise, Aba Technologies, a été au cœur d'un certain nombre d'outils pour faire barrière au virus, et a connu depuis un succès absolument phénoménal, et probablement une des meilleures ambassadrices pour cet écosystème des startups et des licornes marocaines. Mohamed, parlez-nous de ce chemin que vous avez emprunté à Aba Technologies, vous qui avant étiez un serviteur de l'État en quelque sorte, et qui êtes parti ensuite vers le secteur privé.
Merci, très cher ami, pour cette question. En tout cas, lorsqu'on quitte le salariat, on entreprend, il faut qu'on arrive à trouver du sens. On cherche du sens. Lors de la création d'Aba Technologies, ce qu'on souhaitait se donner comme mission, c'était de préserver la santé, l'environnement et la sécurité. C'était vraiment l'élément majeur lors de la création de Aba. Alors, préserver la santé, l'environnement et la sécurité par la technologie. Donc, la technologie, pour nous, c'est un moyen pour pouvoir les préserver. Et lorsqu'on parle de ces technologies-là, on a voulu s'inscrire dans la vision de la souveraineté industrielle et sanitaire que Sa Majesté a promue pour le Maroc, que Dieu l'assiste. Et lorsqu'on parle de la souveraineté industrielle et technologique, quand vous allez prendre un téléphone, une caméra, un capteur, vous avez trois éléments majeurs. Vous avez ce qu'on appelle l'électronique qui est à l'intérieur, vous avez le software embarqué et vous avez le boîtier. Alors chez Aba, ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on a aujourd'hui 3 lignes de production. Il y a une ligne qui fabrique des cartes électroniques, une autre ligne qui fabrique, il y a des machines CNC qui font du commande numérique pour faire des moules et par la suite faire de l'injection plastique, et ensuite la partie software. Donc ces 3 éléments nous ont permis de maîtriser cette logique Et aujourd'hui, on a 3 secteurs d'activité majeurs. Il y a la santé, que vous connaissez, que le grand public connaît, à travers des mallettes de télémédecine, à travers des cabines médicales, à travers des thermomètres, des oxymètres, etc. Nous avons la partie industrielle, on a des capteurs de température, vibration, humidité, mouvement, et finalement la partie sécurité, qui sont tout ce qui est caméras de surveillance, gestion de trafic, etc. Donc ça, vraiment les trois activités majeures. Aujourd'hui, Aba Technologies, c'est quand même 850 personnes présentes au Maroc.
Combien vous pouvez répéter?
850 personnes, voilà, présentes au Maroc, France, Espagne et en Chine. Par exemple, on exporte en Italie des dashboards de véhicules électriques. On exporte en Arabie Saoudite des cabines médicales connectées. On vient d'exporter récemment en Corée du Sud des mallettes de télémédecine pour pouvoir accompagner la région Océan-Pacifique. On vient de démarrer la semaine dernière à Fromagerie Belle à Atlanta la digitalisation des usines. Et surtout avec Aptiv, on est en train de les accompagner sur 25 pays, Maroc, Tunisie, Serbie, Croatie, Turquie, Pologne, pour pouvoir digitaliser les usines et surtout pour revenir sur la mission principale de ABA, de travailler sur la durabilité au niveau de la partie sustainable.
So, President Beruta, what you're telling us is that African startups can break the glass ceiling. African startups can break the glass ceiling. They can go global, they can scale, they can export even to Korea. And often Korea is used by consultants as a benchmark for the journey that they had since the 60s. But let me turn to you, Minister Mazur. What are you doing to help those guys source talents and make sure that in a global market where there is a huge competition and huge brain drain and tremendous incentives coming from the north to have them stay and have them work for Mohammed?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is to have way more Moroccan talents. So around now we're producing around 8,000 Moroccan IT talent per year. We're upskilling around 5,000 per year. We can do more. We have so much young people in Morocco. They're talented in STEM and math, education. They maybe has studied math or physics. So we're working on training orders of magnitude more people. We're working with universities, vocational schools, coding schools, online platforms, and the way we train, the way they can work for Mohammed, they can create their own startups, they can help us bring investors. Our biggest strength in Morocco is our young people. So we're producing more, we're helping them work for Mohammed, but also create their own startups. And for this, as I mentioned, we're working in a very ambitious programs to have more people create startups, to help existing startups grow further, do like what Mohammed did, go abroad. For that, we need to reform regulations. The first thing probably is a legal definition of a startup. Have them have access to financing for the entire life cycle, better quality incubations, and also access to markets locally and globally. So a lot of things are going on. The human element is our biggest strength in our country. And we are just training. Some of them will leave, some of them will stay. And that's how it works.
Mr. Owusu, I'll ask you the same question, but add a little bit of geopolitics because we're in Morocco. So Africa is the battlefield between East and West when it comes to these critical technologies. How do we make sure we don't become a global battlefield for talent, and rather that we nurture, train, and prepare African talents for the next digital age?
I think we just stay non-aligned. We look at what's in our own continental interest and national interest, instead of being there for the East or the West to take the spoils of their war from us. And we've demonstrated that in the midst of all the tensions going on, we can take our own decisions and provide solutions that address our problems. We're leading in fintech because 2 employees of Safari Tech in Kenya decided that let's see how we can use our own technology, 2G, to develop a payment solution to promote financial inclusion. And now it's revolutionized the whole world. During COVID, when people were scrambling around to see how to authenticate COVID tests, we came up with the Panabaya system, travel initiative, which enabled labs and countries to authenticate certificates that labs had produced when the West or the East didn't have any such system. So when it comes to the crunch, Africa has proven that we can develop our own solutions for our own problems, but we need to work together. We need to share technology across borders within the continent. We need to utilize the talent that we have on the continent to activate the Continental Free Trade Area as the key to unlocking the potential that has been spoken of for years, but which we're yet to realize. So the time is now, and we need to take advantage of this convergence of forces, of talent, of technology, of our youthful, innovative talent, and of policymakers who are focused on taking the right decisions to enable us to use the hackneyed phrase leapfrog.
So, Meritazi, let me turn to you. Minister Owusu just mentioned that way beyond circulation of capital, circulation of talent will be essential in Africa if we want to thrive. You do, alongside Shakib Lalij, have a permanent dialogue or conversation, I would say, maybe not dialogue, but conversation with policymakers, and sometimes you do have the tough conversations with them. What is the Moroccan private sector is doing to foster the conversation to better up the digital ecosystem?
One quick remark first on what Si Mohamed was saying. I think and I think he played a great role in this. The COVID period was a moment where we all understood in Morocco, but also in other African countries, that the gap between what we do and what is done in the more mature countries is not so big, and that we can export our products. So personally, on one of the companies, we sold a stake to an American company. They took our IT to develop it globally. And we understood that there is no magic. So we are more than able to develop things that can be used outside in South Korea, and I think it's great. And it's a turning point that we had in 2020. Coming back to your question, the challenges we have is, one, as Minister Mizour was saying, it's talents. So we train, 8,000 people in IT, maybe 10,000, whatever, but we lose day one, 20% of them who goes abroad.
Where?
For a reason that we can understand. Where?
Where did he go?
They go to the West, they go to Europe, they go to Canada, and we lose them for some reason, for reasons that we understand, but that's a point. Two, in companies that employ IT people or tech people, they have a retention rate of about 70%, which means 30% of them leave every year, and that's a great challenge that we have. We need to fix that by training more, but I think also the development of our countries from a social perspective, etc., is over time will make them stay at some point. The second big issue that we have is, I think, is regulation. Most of our regulation have been written before the digital change, and I think we have to be faster in the way we adapt to the regulation. By the time we adapt, there is a new regulation, so we need to find a way to shorten the time between when we understand that we need to change something and when it's done. And that has to be done sector by sector. In every sector, you still have regulation that says if you want to set a contract between this and that, if it's not written and signed and this, it's not valid, for example. But that's everywhere, and we need to adapt.
The mighty power of red tape, as they call it here in Africa,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Third point, and I'll be very quick on this, is the free flow of earnings between countries, and that's I think we're all aware of this, but we need to fix that.
My esteemed panelists, we only have 4 minutes left before the big guys come in to the stage, and I know that a lot of you are excited to see them have this conversation. But Abe, let me turn to you. There is an almost shimmering change of image of IMF in Africa. The word IMF used to be a foul word in the 80s and 90s. And 3 days ago, we saw the managing director of IMF wearing the Moroccan national team jersey. And I think it's iconic of the transformation that your institution is undergoing. How do we make sure as well that IMF keeps on check the social agenda, and that every money that is invested goes as well into creating an impact on building a better welfare state and a more social nations.
Thanks. I mean, you know, the former managing director, Kristalina, too, used to say that this is not your grandfather's IMF. And it really is true, because I've been there a while, and also I used to be one of the people in the 80s that had concerns about structural adjustment policies in the region, etc. So, and what has brought about this change? I think, honestly, it's a reflection of the changing times, but also a lot of the work and studies that have gone on in the institution to try and understand what are the key drivers of growth. So a lot more emphasis on how the need to address inequality, because in the long run, if you don't address that, that's, you know, it's not even economically beneficial, let alone politically beneficial. And I think one of the other lessons has been how important it is to come in scale when countries are challenged. So we're incredibly happy and proud that since a pandemic, we've provided the region with some $80 billion of financing. That is multiple amounts of the financing the region needed, and we recognize that we have responsibility as the entity that provides the safety net for countries to step in when markets are disrupted, when livelihoods are being disrupted. Lastly, there is also very strong emphasis on social protection in the programs we have with countries, including through using technology. So one of the proud things we're associated, you know, we were happy to see in Africa, including innovation, was, for example, in Togo, during the pandemic, they came up with a program called Novisi, which was providing transfers to telephones, via telephones, to people that needed it most, you know, whose livelihoods were being disrupted. And we encourage those kinds of innovations exactly to address the challenge that you noted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Selassie. Mohamed, je reviens vers vous pour cette question finale. Et j'ai voulu que cette question finale soit un peu personnelle, dans la mesure où on a rarement des entrepreneurs qui amènent la proof of concept, de pouvoir amener des entreprises à taille. Selon vous, pour reprendre la première image que j'ai donnée, quelle dose d'inconscience faut-il et quelle dose de numeric establishment faut-il pour pouvoir prendre l'entreprise et pouvoir l'amener à la taille nécessaire? On a souvent des entrepreneurs du numérique qui n'ont pas les codes pour comment lever de l'argent, par exemple, et on a parfois des gens qui savent lever de l'argent mais qui ne connaissent pas les codes du numérique. C'est quoi le bon dosage?
Le bon dosage entre les deux. En tout cas, chez ABBA, on n'a pas encore levé des fonds. Voilà. Chez ABBA aujourd'hui...
Toute votre croissance est une croissance qui a été greenfield et financée par votre propre BFM.
C'est financé par le cash flow généré. C'est-à-dire que j'ai entendu tout à l'heure sur l'histoire des startups et d'autres, les plupart des startups apprennent à pitcher. Dès qu'ils commencent à travailler sur un petit produit, ils commencent à chercher des investisseurs. Je pense que c'est une fausse route. Le plus important, c'est qu'il faut passer du temps avec le client. Comprendre ce qu'on peut délivrer au client, être proche du client. Et lorsqu'on est proche du client et on arrive à créer de la valeur et qu'on travaille sur les fondamentaux, parce qu'une fois qu'on s'éloigne des fondamentaux, il y a des crises. Les fondamentaux, c'est comment acheter, comment produire, comment délivrer, comment gérer le lead time, comment gérer le time to market. Et c'est ça ce qu'on c'est chez ABBA. Ça c'est l'élément premier. Le deuxième élément, pour revenir sur la notion des talents, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, chez ABBA, on ne recrute pas sur diplôme. Aujourd'hui, lorsque vous intégrez ABBA, on vous donne des use cases sur un week-end, vous arrivez à les réussir, vous êtes recruté. Vous êtes recruté, à partir de là, on croit à votre talent.